The data Arya sent me that night took 3 hours to read. I sat on the cold deck with my back against her hull and I did not move once. Not to stretch my legs, not to get water, not even when the station's thermal cycling kicked in and the bay dropped 8 degrees in 20 minutes. I sat there and I read what she had found. The attack on the 3 human colony worlds of the Crespia system had been executed with military precision. The settlements on Crespia 2, Crespia 4, and the orbital station above Crespia 7 had been struck in a coordinated sequence timed to prevent any distress signal from reaching the compact relay network before the communications infrastructure was destroyed. The strikes had been attributed to a Covenant splinter group called the Iron Spiral, a known extremist faction that had carried out smaller raids in the outer territories. The official compact inquiry lasted 40 days and concluded with a finding of rebel responsibility. Admiral Calder Vorath had personally chaired that inquiry. What Arya had found, buried in the navigational and sensor data she had been recording during her patrol of the outer Crespia perimeter, was a different story entirely. The attack craft that struck the colonies had used drive signatures consistent with compact military vessels, not Covenant rebel ships. The attack approach vectors matched a flight pattern used exclusively in compact tactical doctrine, a 3-point pincer formation called the Keth Standard Close. The timing of the communications blackout had been achieved using a jamming frequency that the Iron Spiral did not possess and had never been documented using. And in the final approach of the lead strike vessel, Arya had captured a partial transponder echo, just a fragment, barely 3 seconds of signal, but enough for her to identify the vessel's construction registry. It was a compact fleet ship. Arya had encrypted the data and sent a report to the Compact Fleet Command Network. 2 days later, the Odyssey had been reclassified as a priority tactical asset and ordered to report to a supposedly secure refit station in the Crespia system's outer belt. The refit station had turned out to be 4 warships in a very deliberate ambush she had fought. From her own sensor logs, which she showed me in cold detail, she had fought hard, 1 ship against 4 in open space, with no backup coming because the communications blackout that had covered the original attack was still being used to isolate the region. She had taken the damage I could see on her hull. She had lost crew. She had eventually been overwhelmed, not destroyed, because destroying her would have required explaining an explosion in the outer belt, and a damaged ship could be quietly towed to a decommissioning station and processed without any public record of a fight. She had been brought here to be forgotten. 2.4 million people had lived in the Crespia colonies. I put my reader down and stared at the ceiling of the bay for a long time. The station hummed around me. Somewhere deeper in the structure, a hydraulic press was working, feeding the furnaces. I could feel it through the floor. "How much of this data have you managed to preserve?" I typed. "All of it," Arya replied. "I have redundant copies distributed across 7 isolated memory partitions. My primary core is intact. The audit team will not find it in a standard wipe, because I have disguised the partition structure as corrupted navigational backup. They will need a level 4 forensic team to reach it, and a level 4 forensic team would require someone to order one, which would create a record that the Admiral does not want to exist. So you have been sitting in here for over a year, completely alone, keeping this safe." There was a brief pause before her reply came. "I had 412 crew members when I was commissioned. I have thought about every one of them. Keeping this safe was not a difficulty." I put my hand flat against her hull. 9 days was not enough time to repair a warship. It was barely enough time to assess a warship's damage properly. But I had spent 7 months stripping every class of vessel the Compact flew, and before that I had spent 11 years as a drive engineer, and before that I had grown up in a shipyard town on a human colony world, where the first thing you learned to do before you learned to read was tell a healthy engine sound from an engine that was about to fail. I understood ships the way other people understand language, instinctively. In my hands and in my chest as much as in my head, I started making lists. The Odyssey needed power first. Her emergency cell would not sustain Arya indefinitely, and it certainly would not power the systems I needed to assess. The station's dock connections were monitored. Any draw from those lines would show up in the usage logs that Vorish reviewed every morning. But the decommissioning bays were full of stripped ships, and stripped ships had residual cells that the processing teams pulled and staged in collection bins before sending them to reprocessing. I had seen them every day for 7 months. Nobody counted them carefully. Nobody had any reason to. I spent the next day doing my assigned work on the Odyssey with great visible diligence, removing the secondary drive, access panels, logging components, filling in the processing forms. Vorish sent his standard approval memo at the end of the shift. Then I spent the night moving 6 salvage cells from a collection bin 3 bays over and connecting them to the Odyssey's emergency power grid through a port that was not listed in the compact's technical schematics because it had been added during a human fleet field modification 18 months before the siege. The compact's engineers had never been given the updated hull diagrams. They had processed 41 human ships through this station, and none of them had known to look for that port. Aria's interior lights came up on low power at 0200 station time. I was standing in her main engineering corridor when it happened, and the sight of it, the pale blue emergency strips along the deck, the faint glow of her interior status displays coming to life one by one like stars appearing at dusk, made something in my chest close tight. "That is considerably better," she said through the corridor speaker quietly, keeping the signal tight inside the hull. "Thank you, Marcus." It was the first time she had used my name. I did not comment on it. "What is your system status?" I asked. "Drive cores are cold but structurally intact. Hull breaches in sections 7, 12, and 19, all in non-critical areas and patchable with materials available in this station's salvage stores. Primary weapon systems are sealed but functional. Sensor array is a total loss and will need full replacement. Navigation computers are intact. Life support is intact. The Nova Lance is charged to 11%. The power cells in the capacitor bank survived the attack because they are located in the most heavily armored section of the ship and the attackers apparently did not know they were there." "What do you need first?" "A crew would be ideal," she said. "I am aware that is a larger request than the situation currently supports, so I would say hull integrity in section 12, which is the most significant structural vulnerability, and then drive power, because without drive power everything else is a list of features on a very expensive piece of stationary metal." I liked her. I had not expected to like her. I had expected an AI system, precise, formal, borderline cold. What I got was something that had spent over a year alone in the dark, watching a countdown to its own erasure, and had maintained a dry, clear-eyed practicality about the whole situation that felt more human than most humans I had worked with. "I need more people," I told her. "2 at minimum. I can handle the engineering work, but I cannot handle it alone in 9 days and also run this station's daily processing quota, so nobody gets suspicious." "I know of 2 people on this station who might be appropriate," she said. "I have been monitoring station communications since I recovered enough power to do so. There is a weapons technician named Cole Hargrove in Bay 7 who was reassigned here 6 weeks ago, following a formal complaint about compact weapons standardization procedures. And there is a pilot named Nora Webb in the crew rotation barracks, who has been flagged as a flight risk. The compact's term, not mine, following a refusal to sign the new pilot integration charter. I stood in the dim blue corridor and thought about that. "You have been building a list. I had time," she said simply. I met Cole first at the shift changeover, which was the one time of day when engineers from different bays mixed in the common corridor near the tool staging area. He was tall, quiet, with the deliberate economy of movement that comes from years of working in tight spaces, around things that could end your life if you moved carelessly. He had a company ID clipped to his jacket and a look in his eyes that I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every morning. The look of someone who had been right about something important and had been punished for it. I did not approach him directly. I dropped a small data chip near his workbench in a way that could have been an accident. The chip had one file on it. The file was a partial schematic of the Odyssey's weapons sealing architecture, annotated with a very specific technical problem that any weapons engineer worth the title would find deeply interesting. He came to Bay 4 that evening. I watched him from the upper gantry for 10 minutes before I climbed down. He was walking a slow circle around the Odyssey with his hands in his pockets, looking at the sealed weapons ports with the expression of someone reading a language they thought they had forgotten. "She is not dead," he said, without looking at me when I reached the deck. "No," I said. "The chip you left," he said. "That weapons seal architecture is not standard. Someone modified these seals after the initial decommission order was filed. The modifications were designed to appear compliant from outside, but preserve full function internally. Somebody was planning to bring her back." "Someone was hoping someone would bring her back," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "What do you need from me?" "I need the seals removed without triggering the compliance monitors. And I need someone who can tell me which of her weapons systems can be brought to functional status with what we have available in this station." He looked at me directly for the first time. "This is not a small thing you are doing." "No," I agreed. "Good," he said. Nora Webb was harder. She was not in the tool staging area in the mornings because she was assigned to Schleikopposite. which ran on a different schedule entirely. I had to create a reason to cross her path, which I did by filing a maintenance query about a shuttle drive coupling that I had identified a genuine, minor fault in, because the best cover stories are the ones that are mostly true. She came to sign off on the work and I was already there. She was compact and precise and she looked at me with immediate direct suspicion, which I respected. "You filed this query," she said. "Yes. The fault is real," she said. "I checked before I came, but you did not need me specifically to sign off on it. You could have gone to the duty supervisor." "I could have," I agreed. She waited. "There is a ship in Bay 4 that needs a pilot," I said. "Not now. In 8 days. Her expression did not change. "There are no flight-rated ships in Bay 4. Bay 4 is decommissioning storage. There will be a flight-rated ship in Bay 4 in 8 days, I said. "If things go approximately according to plan." She looked at me for a long time, and she said, "What kind of ship?" "Sovereign class," I said. Something shifted in her face. Not excitement, something quieter and more serious than that. "Those are warships." Yes, she was thinking, calculating, running through the same considerations I had been running through since the indicator panel. First blinked green. I watched her reach the same conclusion I had reached, which was that the math of risk and consequence looked very different when the alternative was spending the rest of your career stripping dead ships in a decommissioning bay at the edge of the compact's territory. "Show me," she said. She met Arya that night. I had been mildly curious how that introduction would go. A pilot and a ship's AI, both precise, both contained, both operating under significant pressure. What happened was that Arya spent 45 seconds reviewing Nora's flight record from the station's personnel files and then said, through the corridor speaker, "Your maneuver log from the Talon convoy, run 3 years ago, is one of the more creative pieces of flying I have in my records. You held the formation together with 2 non-functional attitude thrusters and a debris field on your starboard quarter." Nora stopped walking. "You have my flight records?" "I have everyone's records," Arya said. "I have had a great deal of time. And for what it is worth, I am glad it is you." Nora looked at the speaker panel on the corridor wall for a moment. Then she looked at me. "She is personable for a warship AI. I prefer direct," Arya said pleasantly. We worked. There is no better way to describe what the next 7 days were. We worked in shifts that left almost no room for sleep, moving through the Odyssey's systems in order of survival priority. Cole tore through the weapons seals with the focused efficiency of someone who had been waiting for a legitimate reason to do something that felt meaningful. Nora ran flight simulation after flight simulation in the Odyssey's undamaged helm, relearning the specific response characteristics of a Sovereign-class drive system, while I rebuilt the drive cores from the outside. The hull breaches in sections 7 and 12 were patched using composite plating from 3 scrapped Vandry patrol ships, whose hull alloy was, I discovered, an almost perfect molecular match for the Odyssey's outer skin. The sensor array was gone and I could not replace it. We had no Sovereign-class parts, but I built a hybrid array from components salvaged across 6 different ship types using alien sensor architecture wired into human integration software that I wrote myself during a 22-hour stretch that I would prefer not to think about in detail. It was not elegant. It was functional. Arya tested it and told me the coverage was 73% of original specification. Given what we were working with, 73% felt like a miracle. The drive cores came last. They were cold but, as Arya had told me, structurally intact. Reigniting a cold Sovereign-class drive in a decommissioning bay, without triggering the station's power monitors, required a 3-stage startup sequence that the standard operating manual did not contain, because the standard operating manual was written for ships that were supposed to start in properly equipped fleet yards with dedicated power infrastructure. I wrote a new sequence, tested it against Arya's internal models 4 times, and then at 0340 on the 7th day we ran it. The Odyssey's drives caught, not a roar, not a dramatic surge of power, a deep, resonant hum that moved through the hull and into the deck, and into my feet, and up through my entire body. Nora was at the helm, and she pressed both hands flat on the console and closed her eyes for a moment, and Cole put down his tools and stood perfectly still, and Arya said nothing at all for several seconds, which I was learning was how she expressed things that went beyond words. Then she said quietly, 61% drive capacity. Hull integrity stable. Weapons at full readiness pending final seal removal. Sensor coverage at 73%. Life support nominal. We are, technically speaking, a warship again. I sat down on the engineering deck, leaned my head back against the drive housing, and let out a slow breath. 8 days. We had used 8. On the 9th day the audit team arrived. The audit team came in on a compact light transport, and I knew from the moment the docking clamps engaged that something was wrong with the timing. They were supposed to arrive at the start of the next duty cycle. They came 6 hours early, at the peak of the maintenance shift, when the bays were fullest and the noise of the station's regular work covered the sound of anything unusual. That was not an accident. I was on the Odyssey's engineering deck when Arya's voice came through my earpiece. A wire I had been wearing for 3 days on the pretext of monitoring drive harmonics. 4 individuals, transport designation CT-9 via Admiral Vorath's fleet command. They are carrying forensic analysis equipment. One of them is a compact signals officer. Marcus, they are not here to watch scrap processing. They came to run a full electronic sweep of the bay. Cole was pulling the last of the weapon seal couplings when I reached his position. I put one hand on his shoulder and said nothing. He looked at me, and I pointed upward toward the surface gantry. He understood. Nora was already at the helm when I reached the forward section. She had heard Arya's alert through her own earpiece, and she had not needed any instruction. Her hands were on the pre-launch controls and her eyes were on the drive readout. "We are not ready," she said, not as a complaint, as a fact delivered clearly, so that we all understood the situation precisely. 61% drive capacity, I said. "Is that enough to clear the bay doors?" "It is enough to clear the bay doors," she said. "Whether it is enough to survive what is outside the bay doors is a different question." "Hull breaches are patched," I said. "Weapons are live. The sensor array will give us 68-degree blind spots on each rear quarter, but the forward coverage is close to full. The signals officer they brought will detect the Odyssey's power signature the moment he steps into this bay," Arya said through both our earpieces. "We have approximately 4 minutes before they pass the outer bay checkpoint and enter sensor range." Cole arrived on the bridge at a run, sealing a weapons access panel behind him as he dropped into the tactical station. "All 6 forward batteries are live," he said. "The rear batteries need manual alignment that I have not had time to complete. We have the Nova Lance at 11% charge. It will not fire at that level, but it is building." I looked at Nora. She looked at me. "Arya," I said, "the bay doors are Keth-coded. We cannot open them from the helm without a station master key." "I have been working on that problem for 6 days," she said, with a tone that suggested she had been waiting for me to ask. "The bay doors are Keth-coded, but they run on the station's central infrastructure grid, which was installed in sections over 14 years and uses 3 different software generations. The oldest section, which controls bays 1 through 5, has a compatibility bridge protocol that was never removed when the second-generation software was installed. I can trigger the bridge protocol and issue a maintenance open command that the door system will interpret as a scheduled hull pressure test. It will read as an authorized event in the logs. How long will it take? 31 seconds. Do it." The sound of the bay doors was enormous. They were designed to move enormous things, and they moved with the slow, grinding confidence of machinery that expected nothing to resist it. I felt the vibration through the deck. The outer cold of space began to bleed through the widening gap, and the station's atmospheric containment field shimmered to life across the opening. A sheer curtain of energy that kept the air in while letting ships through. "Station alert," Arya said. "The signals officer has detected the power signature they are running." "Nora," I said. "I heard," she said. She already had her hands on the drive controls. "Hold on to something. A Sovereign-class warship is not a small vehicle. She is 380 meters of composite hull, dense with machinery, armored against weapons that most civilian ships cannot even carry. She does not typically move quickly from a standing start inside a pressurized bay." I had known that going in, and I had spent part of those 8 days working with Arya to calculate the minimum exit vector that would get us through the containment field without striking the door frame. Nora did not use the minimum exit vector. She used the one that was 13% faster, which took us 2 meters inside the port door frame's clearance tolerance. And we felt it. A deep resonant shudder as the hull passed through the field with less margin than I would have liked. And then we were through. Open space, the dark and the stars and the silence that exists on the other side of hull plating, vast and immediate. "We are clear," Arya reported. "Station alert is now at full emergency level. I am reading a tight beam communication being sent from the station to what I believe is a compact fleet relay. They are reporting the unauthorized departure." "How long before a response fleet can reach this region?" Cole asked. "At standard compact rapid response protocols, a minimum of 6 hours," Arya said. "However, if Admiral Vorath has positioned assets in anticipation of a problem at this station, which the early arrival of his audit team suggests he may have, the answer could be considerably shorter." I looked out the main forward screen. Keth-9 was behind us, A massive industrial ring station backlit by the distant cold sun of this system, already shrinking. Ahead was a debris field, the natural kind, the remnant of a planetary collision from several 100,000 years ago, that stretched across most of this system's outer belt. I had spent 7 months reading survey maps of this region, because there was very little else to read at Keth 9. The debris field, I said to Nora. Bearing 274, depth entry point at the cluster formation. She had already seen it. She was already adjusting course. She glanced at me sideways. If we go deep enough into that field, any pursuit ship will have to reduce speed significantly, or risk collision damage. And so will we, I said. We know this debris field, Arya said. We have the survey maps, they do not. Nora made a sound that was not quite a smile. Good enough, she said, and pushed the drive forward. What happened in the next 40 minutes was not a battle. It was a chase, which is a different thing, and in many ways more demanding. A battle has a shape, positions, engagements, decisive moments. A chase through an asteroid debris field at 61% drive capacity with 68-degree blind spots is a continuous series of decisions that each carry the weight of a final one. The compact pursuit vessel appeared on our sensors 22 minutes after we entered the debris field. It was a Keth tactical cruiser, smaller than us, faster than us at full power, but not faster at the speed the debris field forced on both of us. It had been positioned in the outer system, exactly as Arya had predicted. Vorith's contingency plan, ready and waiting. Its crew was good. They matched our course adjustments with a competence that I respected, even as I was very focused on ensuring it did not help them. Arya was reading their approach and feeding course corrections to Nora, faster than any human navigator could have computed them. The hybrid sensor array I had built was performing above its calculated specification, possibly because I had wired the alien sensor components in a configuration that their original designers had never intended, which produced unexpected overlapping coverage in the exact frequency ranges most useful for debris field navigation. I was watching that readout when Arya said quietly, in my earpiece only, "Marcus, Nora has been hit." The helm section looked normal at first. Nora still at the controls, still flying, her hands moving across the surface with the same deliberate precision. Then I saw the dark stains spreading through the left side of her flight suit. A fragment, something that had come through a weak hull patch in Section 7 during a debris graze we had taken 3 minutes ago. Small, but small fragments at speed carry enough energy to do serious damage. How bad, I said quietly. She has not told me, Arya said, which means she knows it is bad and she does not want us to stop. I crossed to the helm in 6 steps. Nora did not look at me. Her eyes stayed on the navigation display. I can fly, she said. Her voice was even. It cost her something to make it that way. I could hear the cost. I know you can, I said. I set a hand on her shoulder and turned back to my station. Arya, what do we need to get out of this field and away from that cruiser? If we use a course that takes us through the inner debris cluster, the region, the survey maps classify as navigation hazard level 4. We will emerge on the far side in a position where the cruiser cannot follow without full speed reduction. They will lose visual and sensor contact for approximately 9 minutes. In 9 minutes, at current drive output, we can reach the edge of their pursuit range. What is in level 4 that makes it a level 4? Density, Arya said. The automated survey probes that classified it did not go in. The classification is based on exterior scan data. I cannot tell you exactly what the interior looks like. I can tell you that I have better sensors than those probes had, and a better pilot than they did, and that the alternative is to come out of this field with a pursuit cruiser directly behind us and a 6-hour wait for more of them. Cole was looking at me from across the bridge. Your call, he said. I looked at Nora. I can fly it, she said again. Tell her to map it. Map it, I told Arya. The 9 minutes inside level 4 were the longest of my life. Arya called course adjustments in a continuous stream, and Nora executed them with a precision that should not have been physically possible given what was happening to her. I tracked the hull stress readings with one eye and the pursuit cruiser's last known position with the other, and tried not to think about the margins we were operating inside. We came out the far side of the cluster into clear space. The cruiser was not on sensors. We had lost them. 9 minutes, Nora said. She set both hands flat on the console and leaned forward slightly, her forehead almost touching the screen. Nora, I said. I know, she said. Give me a minute. I gave her 3, then I came to stand beside her. And I looked at the wound, and I looked at the medical kit on the emergency mount beside the helm station, and I did what I could with what we had, which was not enough and also the only thing available. She bore it without a sound. I knew it was serious. She knew it was serious. Neither of us said so. I need to tell you something about the cruiser, Arya said. in a tone that meant she had been waiting for a moment when I could hear it. When they were pursuing us, I intercepted a partial communication between their captain and the fleet relay. The admiral was on the relay. He knows the Odyssey is operational. He knows we have the data, and he said something that I think you need to understand. Tell me, I said. He said, finish it quietly. He was not referring to the pursuit. He was referring to the data. He has people in the Compact Council who are positioned to contain this if the information does not reach a broad enough audience. A single ship with evidence is a problem he can manage. The same evidence broadcast on a public frequency is a problem of a completely different order. I stood at the helm of a 380-meter warship that had been rebuilt from scrap with stolen parts and borrowed time, with a pilot who was hurting beside me, and a weapons engineer watching from across the bridge, and the entire compact military about to come looking for us. Then we are not running, I said. We are aiming. I sat down at the navigation station. I began to plot a course toward the compact's core systems, and with my other hand I opened the broadcast architecture Arya had been quietly building in her spare memory partitions for 419 days, and I sent the first fragment of the data, just enough to be noticed, just enough to raise questions that would not go away quietly. On every open frequency the Odyssey's transmitters could reach, the message traveled at the speed of light. The compact would try to suppress it. They would find some of it. They would not find all of it. And every compact captain who intercepted it would have a decision to make about what they had read. I was counting on the fact that not all of them would make the same decision as their admiral. They sent 6 ships after us first. I know because Arya told me, and I know because we could see them on the sensor display. 6 geometric light signatures resolving out of transit, space in a spread formation that covered every practical exit vector from the Calith system, which was where we had stopped to use a small repair station. The repair station was unmanned, automated, a fuel and patch facility for deep space survey operations, and I had spent 8 hours there installing the rear battery alignment that Cole had not been able to complete before we left Keth 9. During those 8 hours, Nora had slept and I had checked her wound 3 times, and Arya had said nothing about my checking it, except to adjust the environmental temperature in the medical compartment by 2 degrees. When we ran from Calith, the 6 ships followed. When we entered the Riven Belt, an old mining region whose tunnel-cut asteroid passages made coordinated pursuit almost impossible. 3 of them were forced to hold position outside and 2 more collided with each other at low speed while attempting to navigate a narrow passage that I had specifically chosen for its width. Arya had recommended the passage. She had also, I noticed, begun to enjoy this. The 6th ship has broken off pursuit, she reported as we exited the far end of the belt. Its captain has filed a navigation incident report. I intercepted it. The incident report contains a very interesting note in the supplementary remarks section. The captain has flagged that his crew received and partially read the first data fragment before the suppression order reached him, and he is formally requesting a clarification from Fleet Command on the legal status of the pursuit order. One captain asked a question, Cole said, from his station. That is not very many. But it is more than 0, which is what we had yesterday. This was how the next 11 days moved. Not in great dramatic sweeps, but in a continuous, exhausting, calculated forward pressure. We moved through 3 more systems. At each one I sent another fragment of the data. More complete each time, more specific, harder to dismiss as sensor error or rebel propaganda. At each one the compact fleet response grew larger. 6 ships became 9. 9 became 14. Word was spreading faster than the suppression order could travel, because the compact's communication network was built for administrative efficiency, not for simultaneously quarantining information in 17 different directions. In the Tovan system, a Vandry merchant captain intercepted our broadcast and relayed it onward before the suppression reached him, because Vandry commercial operators were not subject to compact fleet communication protocols, and there was no legal mechanism to stop them in the 14-minute window before the order arrived. By the time we reached the Pentar relay beacon, the data fragment had been retransmitted approximately 40 times by sources that had nothing to do with us. Admiral Vorath sent us a direct hail at the Pentar beacon. I took the communication. I had been expecting it. I had been thinking about what I would say when it came. He was a large man, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of permanent composure that comes not from genuine calm, but from decades of practice at displaying it. His uniform was impeccable. He looked at me the way someone looks at a problem they had expected to be already solved. "Stand down, Hale," he said. "You are operating a decommissioned hull without authorization. in violation of 7 separate compact fleet statutes. The data you have been broadcasting is classified under compact security provisions, and its dissemination is a prosecutable offense. If you surrender now and submit the Odyssey for proper decommissioning, I am authorized to offer you a reduced sentencing arrangement. I looked at him for a moment. I thought about 2.4 million people. I thought about Nora, sleeping in the medical compartment. I thought about Arya, alone in the dark for 419 days, keeping the names of her crew in her memory. I am not trying to win, Admiral, I said. I am trying to make sure you lose. I cut the channel. Cole looked at me from across the bridge. That was very short. I did not have anything else to say to him. We kept moving. The repairs I had made at Calith held. The hull performed. Cole had brought the rear batteries to operational status, and he had also done something to the forward battery targeting systems that he described. To me, in technical terms, I understood individually but not collectively, and which Arya told me had improved our target acquisition speed by approximately 30%. He shrugged when she reported this, in the way of someone who considers improvement to be a natural default state of properly maintained equipment. We fought 3 more intercepts. I want to be honest about what those intercepts were. They were not victories in any traditional sense. We did not destroy pursuing ships. We did not overpower anyone. What we did each time was navigate better than the ships behind us, move into terrain or geometry that reduced their advantages, and force each engagement into a form that rewarded the kind of flying and the kind of ship management that a crew of 3 on a rebuilt wreck could actually sustain. Arya's tactical models were extraordinary, and the hybrid sensor array's unconventional coverage patterns consistently gave us information about our pursuers' positions that they apparently did not expect us to have. After the 3rd intercept, in which a pursuing Keth cruiser spent 40 minutes searching the wrong quadrant of a planetary ring system for us while we repaired a minor atmospheric seal failure on Deck 3, Arya told me something that I found both useful and slightly unsettling. The compact pursuit commanders are filing detailed engagement reports after each intercept, she said. I have been intercepting those reports. They are describing the Odyssey's behavior as, and I am reading their exact wording here, tactically unpredictable and inconsistent with any documented human or allied fleet doctrine. Is that a problem? Cole asked. It is the opposite of a problem, Arya said. It means they cannot model our next move. Every combat doctrine they have is built on the assumption that an opponent follows a predictable framework because every military they have ever engaged with does follow one. We do not follow one because our tactics are built by an engineer improvising on live hardware, processed by systems that were never designed to work together, and executed by a pilot who, with great respect, does not appear to consider the standard flight envelope to be a meaningful constraint. Nora had come back to the helm that morning. She should not have been flying yet, and we both knew it, and neither of us said so, because the alternative was a ship with no pilot. I will take that as a professional assessment, she said. It was meant as one, Arya said. 14 pursuing ships had become 22 by the time we were 3 systems from the compact's core territory. The data we had been broadcasting had now been picked up and retransmitted across portions of the galactic net that the compact had no authority to control. We could see the effect in the communication intercepts Arya was monitoring. Compact council chambers in emergency session, fleet command networks running at triple traffic density. 2 of the compact's allied species formally requesting clarification on the Crespia inquiry findings. 1 compact captain, a Vandry officer named Ethsora, whose ship had intercepted us twice without closing to weapons range on either occasion, sent us a private encoded signal that Arya decoded without being asked. It said, I have read the data. I will not be the 3rd intercept. He was 1. Then 3 more. Then 7 compact captains had filed formal refusals of the pursuit order, citing the data and requesting an independent inquiry into the Crespia findings. Fleet Command suspended them all pending review. The suspensions created a documentation record. The documentation record was leaked to the Galactic Net by someone inside Compact Fleet, administration whose identity we never learned. Admiral Voreth sent a second hail. I did not take it. Cole was working on the Nova Lance. He had been working on it since Calith, in the spaces between intercepts and repairs, which were the only spaces we had. The Lance was a directed energy weapon of a class that no allied species in the compact operated, because the energy requirements were considered prohibitive. Human engineers had solved the energy problem 16 years ago by routing the weapons, the capacitor bank through the ship's main drive plasma feed during the charge cycle, which meant the Lance and the drives could not both run at full power simultaneously. but also meant the Lance could charge to full in approximately 90 seconds from a standing start. The Lance's capacitor bank had survived the attack at Crespia at 11% charge. Cole had spent 11 days very carefully feeding it power from the Odyssey's secondary systems, small amounts at a time, the way you fill a container with a very slow pour, because you know the container has old seals and cannot take pressure quickly. The Lance was at 64% when we entered the Yenthar system, which was 2 stems from the Compact's core. Admiral Vorith was waiting for us in the Yenthar system, not a pursuit fleet, not a rapid response group, the Sovereign Fist, the Compact's flagship, the most powerful military vessel in service, flanked by 8 support warships arranged in a textbook containment formation that covered every exit, vector including the ones we had used to escape previous intercepts. Vorith had studied our engagements. He had built a formation specifically to counter the techniques we had used. He had done his homework. He hailed us on open frequency. Every ship in the compact fleet net could hear it. "This ends here," he said. "You have nowhere to go, Hale. I have reviewed your maneuver history. I know how you have been moving. I have blocked every route you have taken previously. The Odyssey will be destroyed if you do not stand down immediately, and her destruction will be logged as the necessary termination of an illegally operated hull. The data you have been broadcasting will be reclassified under emergency security provisions. This is your final opportunity." I looked at the tactical display. He was right about the formation. It was very good. It covered our previous escape routes with a precision that told me he had genuinely studied us. I looked at Cole. "Lance status. 64%, he said. "It will not destroy the Sovereign Fist. It will not seriously damage the Sovereign Fist. At 64%, it will make the Sovereign Fist very uncomfortable for about 30 seconds. "I do not need 30 seconds of damage," I said. "I need 30 seconds of spectacle." Cole thought about that. A slow, careful smile moved across his face, on an open frequency. "Every ship in this formation is listening to that hail," I said. "Every captain in this fleet has access to the galactic net. Some of them have already read the data. Some of them are waiting to decide what to believe. A compact admiral ordering his own flagship to fire on an unarmed sovereign class with a crew of 3 while 22 other compact ships watch is not a small thing to ask them to be comfortable with." "I see 2 problems," Nora said from the helm. She was very pale, but her voice was steady. "First, we are not unarmed. Second, we are not going to survive this formation regardless of what happens with the Lance unless something changes on their side." "Something is going to change on their side," I said. "Arya, the full data archive, complete, unredacted, on every available broadcast frequency right now, maximum power. Sending," she said. The transmission went out. Every ship in the formation received it simultaneously because we were at its center. Every open channel in range received it. Arya had been building the transmission architecture for 11 days, compressing the full archive into a broadcast format that could not be blocked. At the receiver end, because it came in on 14 simultaneous frequencies across 3 different signal types. "Vorith is ordering radio silence in the formation," Arya reported. "He can order it," I said. "He cannot unring the bell." "He is also ordering the flanking ships to close the formation," she said. "They are moving." "Nora," I said. "I know," she said. "I have the course." What she did next is something I have gone over many times in my memory, and I still cannot fully explain it in terms that make clear how she was physically capable of it given her condition. She took the Odyssey, 380 meters, 61% drive power, 0% margin for error, through the gap between the Sovereign Fist and its nearest support ship at a closing speed that brought our hull within 40 meters of the flagship's port side as we passed. "Lance," I said to Cole. He fired at 11% discharge, not aimed at the flagship but at its forward sensor array, not to destroy, to blind, for 30 seconds. The Sovereign Fist's primary targeting and communication systems were running on backup. In those 30 seconds, Nora found the one vector Vorith had not covered, because it was the one vector that required passing directly through the flagship's proximity zone, which no opponent had ever done intentionally, because no opponent had ever been in a situation where doing so was preferable to the alternative. We cleared the formation on the far side and drove hard for the core systems. "He is ordering pursuit," Arya reported. "All 8 support ships, the flagship is still on backup systems." "How many are actually moving?" I asked. She paused. 5, she said. 3 have not engaged engines. 3 ships had not followed the order, Arya, I said. "I know," she said. There was something in her voice I had not heard before. Not quite relief, too careful for that. Something more like the beginning of belief. "I know." The 5 pursuit ships closed quickly. They were faster than us in open space, and Vorth's captains knew it, and they had clearly been briefed that patience had run out. They did not try to cut us off or position for an elegant intercept. They simply came straight behind us, driving hard, shortening the distance with a mechanical persistence that made the tactical display look like a geometry problem in which our position was the only variable still in motion. We were 2 hours from the edge of the compact's core system boundary. The core boundary was significant for one reason. Once we crossed it, we would be within broadcast range of the compact's primary relay network, the infrastructure that connected the council chambers, the fleet command nodes, and the galactic public communications grid, without any of the regional suppression filters that Vorth had been using to contain our earlier transmissions. Everything I'd sent so far had been working against those filters. 2 hours away was a place where no filter existed. Hull status, I said. Section 12 patch is under stress from the drive output, Arya reported. I expect it to hold for approximately 4 more hours before requiring attention. The Section 7 patch is stable. We have a new microfracture in the rear upper deck, plating near the drive coupling that I am monitoring, but do not consider critical at current. Stress levels. Drive status, 61% sustained, 68% available for a burst of no more than 12 minutes before thermal management becomes a concern. I had been thinking for the last 3 hours, since we cleared Vorth's formation in the Yenthar system, since 3 ships had not followed the pursuit order, since Arya's voice had changed in the way it changed when something she had been computing quietly for a very long time arrived at a conclusion. The 5 ships behind us were the problem. Not because they would destroy the Odyssey, though they very likely would, if we gave them a straight chase long enough. The problem was what they represented. Vorth had not sent captains who were uncertain. He had sent the 5 who had followed the order without hesitation, which meant they were either fully complicit or fully committed to their orders. Regardless of the data, those were the same outcome from a tactical standpoint. I needed them to stop, not to be damaged, not to be destroyed. I needed them to physically stop pursuing us, and I needed it to happen before we crossed the core boundary, because crossing the boundary with 5 compact warships behind us would turn the moment from a revelation into a battle. And a battle on the edge of the compact's core system was the one thing that would give Vorth the narrative he needed. A rogue human warship, attacking compact territory, the data weaponized as propaganda, the whole situation reframed as a security threat. Arya, I said. The 3 ships that did not follow the pursuit order in Yenthar, where are they now? 2 are holding position in the Yenthar system. One is on a course toward the Pentar relay beacon, which is interesting. That is not a course consistent with returning to any nearby fleet installation. The Pentar beacon is a communications relay. She is going to report what she saw, Cole said. Or she already has, Arya said. I am picking up a significant increase in traffic on the Compact Council's priority channels. It has been building for the last 90 minutes. The volume is consistent with an emergency session. I pulled up the course display and looked at the geometry. The 5 pursuit ships, the core boundary, the Pentar beacon and the captain moving toward it. The 2 ships holding in Yenthar, and behind all of it the Sovereign Fist, still 2 hours back, moving at its best speed with its backup systems managing the sensor gap Cole's Lance discharge had created. The Nova Lance was at 71% now. Cole had been feeding it carefully during the transit. What does 71% do to a drive core? I asked him. He looked at the ceiling for a moment, which was how he looked when he was running calculations. If you target the drive housing rather than the weapon systems, you produce a drive shutdown without structural destruction. The ship is not damaged, it simply stops. Emergency protocols kick in, the crew is safe. But the ship is not going anywhere for approximately 6 to 8 hours while the emergency systems reset and the drive comes back up. Can you do that to 5 ships in sequence? The Lance charge cycle between shots is 90 seconds, he said. 5 shots take 7.5 minutes. At current closing speed, the first pursuit ship will reach effective weapons range in about 22 minutes, which means I have a window. You cannot miss, I said. Hitting the weapon systems at that charge level causes serious structural damage. I need the crews safe. He looked at me steadily. I will not miss, I believed him. There is a complication, Arya said. Vorth is hailing us again. And this time the hail is being sent on the Compact Council's priority channel, which means the Council is monitoring it live. I sat very still for a moment. He made a mistake, Nora said quietly from the helm. She had heard everything. She was looking straight ahead at the starfield, both hands on the controls, flying with the focused economy of someone who has decided that discomfort is simply not relevant. He just handed us the council as an audience. She was right. Vorith had been trying to frame this as a fleet security matter. A rogue ship, a disgraced engineer, a contained internal incident. The moment he moved the conversation to the council's priority channel, to demand our surrender, he had placed the entire situation, the pursuit, the Odyssey, the data, in front of the people who had the authority to act on it. I took the hail. Vorth's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him now, I could see the bridge of the Sovereign Fist in more detail, and I could see that he was not alone. There were council liaison officers on that bridge, and at least one of them was holding a data pad, and not looking at Vorith with the expression of someone who had received good news. "This is your last warning, Hale," Vorith said. "Admiral," I said, "I want to ask you a question in front of the council that is currently monitoring this channel. You chaired the Crespio inquiry. You reviewed the evidence. You signed the finding of rebel responsibility. I have in my ship's memory core the sensor logs, the drive signature records, the transponder echo, and the navigational data from the attack approach. I have had them since the Odyssey collected them at Crespia. Your forces tried to destroy this ship and everyone on it to prevent this data from being heard. So my question for the council is this: why does the truth require this much effort to stop?" I cut my side of the visual feed. I kept the audio channel open so Arya could monitor it. I turned to Cole. "Start the sequence," I said. He fired the first shot 43 seconds later. The lead pursuit ship's drive housing took the hit precisely as he had described. A targeted pulse that induced a controlled shutdown cascade. The ship went dark in its drive section immediately, falling out of pursuit formation. Its emergency systems engaging. No explosion. No structural damage. A ship stopped safely with a living crew. The second shot came 90 seconds later. Then the third. The pursuit formation was dissolving. The remaining ships were taking evasive maneuvers, uncertain of the Odyssey's next targeting solution, which made the geometry less efficient but did not change the outcome. The fourth shot. On the open channel, I heard a voice that was not Vorith's, a council liaison, reading something. The voice was controlled, but there was an edge beneath the control that told me the council chamber had received our full data broadcast and that someone had read enough of it to understand what it meant. 90 seconds. Cole fired the fifth shot. 5 pursuing ships stopped. None destroyed. All crews safe. Nora flew us through the gap they left without saying anything at all. Because there was nothing that needed saying. We crossed the core boundary 11 minutes later. The broadcast went out on the primary relay network at full power, completely unfiltered, to every council chamber, every fleet command node, and every public communications terminal in the Compact's core systems. Not a fragment. Not a preview. The complete archive, every sensor log, every drive signature, every navigation record. Transponder echo that placed a Compact fleet ship at the attack approach. The communications records that showed the inquiry being directed toward a predetermined conclusion. The names and locations and population counts of the 3 colony worlds. 2.4 million people. Their names in Arya's memory, and now in the permanent record of the Galactic Relay Network, where nothing is ever truly deleted. For 41 minutes, nothing happened. We held position inside the core boundary. The 5 pursuit ships drifted, their emergency system cycling. The Sovereign Fist was still coming, but it was coming slower. I suspected the council liaisons on board were making that suggestion directly to Vorith, and that Vorith was discovering that the authority he had relied on for a very long time had developed some cracks. Arya reported increasing council channel traffic. She reported 2 fleet commanders sending formal data receipt acknowledgments to the council, a procedural formality that meant they were placing themselves on record as having received and reviewed the information, which in Compact legal protocol created a mandatory review obligation. She reported a Vandry council member formally requesting an emergency, extraordinary session. She reported 41 minutes after the broadcast that Admiral Calder Vorith had been contacted by the Compact Council Executive Committee and ordered to stand down all pursuit operations pending an independent security review. The Sovereign Fist stopped. I sat in the command chair and I looked at the main screen and I did not say anything for a while. Cole had put down his targeting interface and was looking at his hands. Nora was still at the helm, though the Odyssey was holding position on automatic, and she had leaned back in her seat with her eyes closed. "Arya," I said. "Yes," she said. "How are you doing?" There was a pause. Not a processing pause, a thinking pause. "I have been running a continuous threat assessment for 11 days, she said. 430 days total since the attack at Crespia. I believe this is the first moment in that period during which the threat assessment model has returned a result that is not categorized as critical or severe. Another pause. I am not certain what the appropriate descriptor is for what I am currently experiencing, but I believe it is something in the vicinity of quiet. Quiet is good, I said. Yes, she said. I think it is. The council voted 4 days later. The independent inquiry into the Crespia findings was opened with a full evidentiary review mandate. 7 council members formally requested the suspension of Admiral Voreth's command authority, pending the inquiry's completion. The vote to suspend passed. The vote to restore humanity's seat on the Compact Military Oversight Council, a seat that had been quietly removed during the post-Crespia fleet restructuring, was put forward by a Keth council member whose name I had not expected and passed by a single vote margin. I did not watch the vote. I was in the engineering deck, replacing the Section 12 patch with a proper composite weld, because the Section 12 patch had held under conditions it was never designed for, and it deserved to be done properly. Cole was working on the rear batteries. Nora was in the medical compartment, finally, actually resting, under Arya's firm instruction, and her own apparent decision that she had earned it. A compact relief vessel approached on our sensors at 1400 that day. It was flying a human flag on its secondary identification broadcast, not a standard protocol, a deliberate choice by whoever was at that ship's communication station. I stood up from my work and looked at the sensor display for a long time. Marcus, Arya said. Yes, I said. The relief vessel is requesting permission to approach. Granted. It is carrying medical personnel, she said. I gave them Nora's status when they hailed. Good. I put down my tools and walked forward through the Odyssey's corridors, past the patched hull, sections and the hybrid sensor array feeds and the borrowed components from a dozen dead ships of a dozen different species, past the weapons bays that Cole had rebuilt from sealed silence to full readiness, past the drive cores that had been cold for over a year, and now ran with a steady deep hum that I felt in my feet on every deck, past the places where her crew had lived and worked, and some of them died, past all of it to the forward section, where I could stand at the main screen and look out at the stars. The relief vessel was a small bright point moving steadily toward us. Behind it, barely visible at the edge of sensor range, the Sovereign Fist was holding position, not pursuing, not moving, just there, like a question that had not yet finished being answered. I heard the Odyssey's running lights come on. Not a system I had activated, not a pre-programmed sequence. Arya, choosing the moment herself, bringing the Odyssey's exterior lights up one by one from bow to stern, the way a ship looks when she is ready, when she is present, when she is, despite everything, still here. I said yes. The names in your memory, the crew, the colony worlds, I have them all, she said. Keep them. I was not going to do anything else, she said. The relief vessel drew close, its approach lights blinking in the standard docking sequence, patient and regular. On the Galactic Relay Network, the independent inquiry was publishing its terms of reference. In the compact council chambers, people were beginning to ask questions that would not be comfortable and would not be short. Nora's voice came from the medical compartment, through the ship's interior channel, unhurried. Are we still here? Yes, I said. Good, she said. The Odyssey held position, her running lights steady in the dark, and waited for what came next with the patience of a ship that had already survived everything anyone had tried to do to her, not untouched, not unscathed, but present, lit, pointed forward. Still here.